Well, hello. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're all having a good Friday morning, this fine Friday. Yeah. So, yes. We're in week 4 now, and so it's not surprising that when people start dropping off and doing these weekly meetings, that's pretty normal. And really, if these meetings are only as helpful as they need to be for people who who join in, especially if you have last minute questions about the documents for this week. That's generally what Fridays are for. Um, Next week is going to be a little bit different. Next week is week 5, and every 5 weeks in this class we've got an exam. Now these exams are nothing to freak out about. They are they're open book. You can use your resources that you have available. They're kind of a mixture of the analysis papers and the quizzes, in that there are multiple choice and true false questions to answer. And then at the end of the exam, there are some short essays. They do not need to be nearly as extensive as what I am looking for in these analysis papers, though. Like they're short. Like when I say short essay, I mean like short. Um, like you could answer these questions in a few sentences, a couple paragraphs, probably. More detail is always better. But in terms of the exam, what I'm looking for is just a satisfactory answer to the questions. That's really what I'm looking for. So yeah, so we're not going to be meeting next week on Zoom because you have the entire week to do the exam, and that's really all that you have to do, is just the exam. I don't really see much point in meeting. If you have specific questions about the exam, you can just email me. Otherwise, in the past, whenever I've held Zoom meetings on exam weeks, there's just not much to talk about. So I don't even see the point in doing it at all for exam weeks. So that's next week. Is just all you have to do is exam 1. It should be pretty doable. If you have any questions about it, you can email me or ask me during office hours. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. Well, so today we've got a couple things to discuss. We've got a couple documents to discuss. Dealing with the Industrial Revolution, and I got a little bit of confusion by a couple people and their papers about sort of what's going on in these documents, and that's why we're talking about it, because these are a little bit different documents than what we've been discussing in the past. I think they're hopefully more readable. Like we're going to get into more and more accessible documents as we go forward, which is good. So if you would like to turn with me to page 693, we'll discuss the first one. This is Rules of a Factory in Berlin. So what's going on here is during the Industrial Revolution, we start to see the formation of a workplace, a place where people gather at a punctual time and work until a specified time when they can then go home. Sounds familiar, but this isn't really following any kind of pattern that people had seen before, because prior to this, it's mostly agrarian society, right? You're on your farm, and your workday is defined by how light it is outside, or if it's raining, right? Or if you're sick and then you can't go outside and tend to your crops and stuff. Like there's more of a natural pattern to the rhythm of life. But things are a little bit different when we get to the Industrial Revolution. Things have taken a very different pattern. And that's what we're looking at in this rules of a factory in Berlin. It's basically just a list of rules governing the work life of the workers at this particular factory during the Industrial Revolution. So I'm going to ask you guys, what are some of the strict rules that are in place at this factory? What kinds of things are listed in these rules that they're pretty serious about?
No sleep on the job.
Yeah, can't. Yes, you have to be there and working. Absolutely. Yeah. What else?
Stuff like can't talk to your coworkers whatsoever.
You can't talk to your coworkers whatsoever. Yeah. Okay. What else? What other rules are there in this factory?
Don't be on time. Don't be late. You'll get fired.
Yeah. Don't be late. You'll lose your job. Right. What if you leave your house and your clock says that you're arriving on time, but the clock at the factory is different? Which clock do they go by? Do they go by your clock or their clock?
The clock at the factory.
Yeah. They specifically outline that. It's like no loophole in saying that your watch or your clock is different and it says you're on time. We're going by the clock that's here on the factory floor. And it may not be the right time. Maybe they're trying to squeeze a few minutes of productivity out of everyone. Anything else? Any other rules stick out to you as noteworthy or maybe particularly harsh? Or
One that kind of stood out to me was losing payment for overtime.
okay, what do you mean by that?
I think it was I think it was either 2 or 3 that said that they would lose payment if they went over their time at the factory, they couldn't work past the bell.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's no such thing as overtime, right? When the boss wants to go home, then everybody goes home. This is actually still a very commonplace practice in Japan. Japan has a modern sort of work-life culture that's very demanding, that reflects that kind of same rule. How long is the workday at this particular factory? Did anyone catch this? Did anyone measure from bell to bell how long the workday is? When do they have to start working?
6 a.m. or something.
Yeah, and when is the final bell and they have to stop working?
Is it 4:30?
Oh, they wish.
More like 7.
6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Folks, that's the work day. 6 days a week at this factory in Berlin. Those are 13-hour days. Now, there are breaks built in. Okay. Half an hour for breakfast, an hour for dinner, half an hour for tea. Okay. Strictly observed by the clock, by the bells. But still, those are long freaking days, though, right? Do any of these rules seem particularly harsh to you guys, in the modern, aside from the length of the day? Have we progressed in certain ways in our work-life culture would you say? Like, do some of these things seem harsh or out of place to you?
Yeah, the you can't talk to your coworkers, that seems a little weird to me because like my coworkers are what makes work fun for me. And you know, a lot of times workers have like parties and stuff and like back then if you can't talk to them, you can't really have any interaction with them. So I feel like we've evolved in the sense of coworkers are more like friends now.
Yeah, good. Excellent, Lindsay. Yeah, at least people to commiserate with. You know, you're kind of slogging through the trenches
Yeah.
together. And if you couldn't commiserate together, you know, it would be even worse. But yeah, sometimes work can even be fun. My wife is watching The Office, the TV show The Office. We've seen it several times, but she's kind of binge watching through the series again. That's all the show is just like coworkers bantering and you know. Imagine watching The Office and all it is a factory, like a Berlin factory set of rules, right?
That would be so boring.
It would indeed. And it was for real life people way back. If you can't talk to, you know, you can't talk to your coworkers, holy crap, are your days long? Like 13-hour days is a long ass time. Even longer when you can't talk to anybody. But the idea was each of these worker drones, you know, or busy bees need to be focused on their work, not playing pranks on Dwight Schrute, you know, or having fun in any way, party planning committee, all that. What else? Do any of these, does anything else in this picture seem out of place or awkward or different to you guys living in the modern world? And I'm not just asking for fun. Like I'm trying to, you know, tease out some differences here, like how much things have, or how different things were in the days of early capitalism. Some of these other ones stood out to me in this way, right? Number 5, entry to the firm's property by any but the designated gateway, and exit by any prohibited route, like for instance, climbing fences or walls, shall be punished by a fine of 15 silver groschen to the sick fund for first offenses, right? There's a lot there. You have to go through specific entryways and exits or you'll be fined. Like everyone has to be monitored as they enter and leave the premises. What do you think they're afraid of? Like, why does this rule even exist?
I'll just assume maybe like so they don't steal products.
Yeah, stealing products, sneaking in after the bell. You know, if they could possibly get immediately fired if they're 5 minutes late. You hop the wall, try and sneak in through like the bathroom window or something. You know, I was here the whole time, boss. You know, that's prohibited. There's also a sick fund. What do you think that says about early work-life culture in the Industrial Revolution? You don't really see sick funds that much these days. What might that tell us?
That people are getting sick pretty often.
People get sick pretty often. There's no such thing also as like paid time off, right? If you come down sick or like your kid gets sick, you know, with, I don't know, any number of deadly diseases, cholera, typhus, something like that, you just literally can't go to work because you're afraid your kid might die while you're out at work, you know, you could get fired. You could lose, or at the very least, you lose an entire day's worth of pay, which you might rely on to pay rent, which isn't that different from some people have those circumstances today. I worked retail for a number of years before I went to grad school and became a college professor. And I remember those days. No paid time off. Sucked total ass. Like you go into work sick. So like in some ways things haven't changed, and yet in some ways, some segments of our work life, especially for white collar work, is a little bit more humane. Not a lot, but a little bit more humane. What's the work life? What's the relationship between the foreman or the bosses and the workers on the factory floor? What is the relationship like, or the power dynamics like, between workers and their overseers? Did anyone catch this?
Those rules, I would say, it seems like they have the power. It's like, I'm the employer, you're the worker, do what I say, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Maybe
Yeah.
not very very good relationship, just a power relationship.
Yeah, good. Extremely harsh kind of power dynamics here in the workplace. Again, like this is not The Office TV show where people can, banter with Michael Scott and get away with it. No, it's like you're a little tiny little bird, in the in the hands of your foreman, and if he doesn't like you for some reason, that's it. It's game over. Maybe not that different still from today. Like bosses have kind of wield ultimate power in the workplace also in some places today, but it's like that harsh, stark power dynamic that's codified into the rules of this factory rule book. Makes it very plain and clear, what the role of the workers are. So this, looking at this document, this is probably one of the most useful documents for looking at Industrial Revolution stuff. Because it's just so emblematic of life in early industrial capitalism. This directly plays into, the question prompt about, it takes both sides. Like the advantages that people have in being able to go to work, working having fairly regimented hours, 13-hour work days. Rain or shine, you're going to go to work and you're going to work 13 hours. That can be seen as like an advantage that the working class people can enjoy during this period, is that you have stable hours, you have stable days. Just because it's raining outside doesn't mean you can't go to work like it would in the olden days. However, now people have these rules foisted upon them in the workplace. Right? When you worked on your own farm, you didn't have these, you made your own rules, right? But now you are at the mercy of these bosses. You're at the mercy of the clock. You're at the mercy of whether you can even make it to work because of sickness or something. You're at the mercy of the sick fund. If the collective sick fund, which people are kind of paying into to try and take care of each other, this is like an early form of unionization. If that sick fund is dry and you get sick, you're screwed, man. So this is a really good document to taking with you into this writing assignment, because it works both ways. You can analyze this document 100 different ways as being either like an advantage of this kind of economic revolution or a disadvantage for people, right? It's both at the same time. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with the rules of the factory? Let's move on to Friedrich Engels. Engels, has anyone read the Communist Manifesto before? If you're a hidden communist, you're keeping it very close to your chest. Well, guess what? You'll get to read the Communist Manifesto pretty soon. But Friedrich Engels is one half of the dynamic duo that writes the Communist Manifesto. Engels, along with Karl Marx, kind of introduces the idea of communism to mainstream discourse, and we've been talking about it ever since. But before he did that, before Friedrich Engels became this kind of communist evangelical, that's a weird way to put it, this evangelizing communist, I suppose, right? Spreading the good news of communism everywhere. He wrote about the factory conditions in Manchester, England. Now, so the city of Manchester it's still a pretty populous city. It's still the center of a lot of economic life in the country of England and Great Britain. Manchester United, is the big soccer team, and I guess Man City now. But before kind of modern Manchester was created, it was this boom town for the Industrial Revolution in Britain. So if you wanted to go somewhere and look at the effects of the Industrial Revolution on the economy, on the people living in the city, on the environment, you'd want to go to Manchester, because Manchester, Liverpool, and London are the three cities in England that were just exploding in population, in the number of factories there. So Manchester, in other words, gives us a really good case study on what life was like during the Industrial Revolution. That's what Friedrich Engels is interested in. He's this German guy who comes from a fairly well-to-do family. His dad is a factory owner, in fact. But Friedrich Engels is kind of like this rebellious kid who wants to kind of stick it to his dad and stick it to the man. And he writes about the plight of the working class during the Industrial Revolution. So on pages 702 to 707 is where we start to get a really good firsthand look. And this guy might be biased because he has his motivations, to publish only the worst things about the Industrial Revolution, because he's a commie. But nonetheless, it's a very instructive document. So on pages 702, he starts talking about, this is just it's a big book, but it's a good selection where he starts talking about Manchester in a bunch of different ways, from the perspective of the people, the perspective of the environment. So what are some of the most vivid and maybe disturbing descriptions that stood out to you reading this document? How does he describe Manchester?
They described it as some kind of cesspool.
Yeah, that's a really succinct way of putting it, Jack. A cesspool. Why is it a cesspool?
Which book? The Western Civilizations book or the?
No, this is the perspectives from the past.
Oh, okay.
Book.
Okay.
Why is this a cesspool? Why? What kind of things make Manchester just an awful place to be?
He talks about the overcrowding and the trash spilling out onto the streets, and people using the bathroom in the streets, just disgusting things.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. So people, just filth everywhere, filth in the streets and the gutters. You mentioned the overcrowding. So here we're starting to see the issue of hyper-urbanization. People have always lived in cities, but usually cities are maybe 10,000 people, 20,000 people, in the late Middle Ages, early modern period. And now we get to industrialization. Everyone is flocking to the cities. So it creates this problem of hyper-urbanization. Everyone is living in these crowded places all at once. What else is going on in Manchester? There's the filth, there's overcrowding.
Like a stream of urine and feces and trash and everything, like the Irk or something. It's just like a trash river.
Yeah. So the Irk used to be this beautiful, pristine, river that I think runs through Manchester. I should probably just Google Maps this, but it's a river somewhere in the greater Manchester area that used to be this like idyllic, beautiful, according to Engels anyway, green pastures, beautiful, riverside places just to go and enjoy nature. And now it is overflowing with filth, with trash. You wouldn't want to go in the River Irk anymore, So yeah, so there's environmental issues that come with industrialization. There's the social aspect of people living in their own filth, and if there's overcrowding. See, you get it. Okay, so right, we're starting to see the picture that he's painting for us, and it's a rather bleak one, right? How are the working class people of Manchester doing? Like, are they getting by? Are they happy to be living in Manchester? How does he describe the people, the state of the people living there?
I'd say it seems sad or just getting by, just hoping it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, good. I'm trying to find exact lines from the document that kind of illustrate your point. Yeah, but you get this kind of like sense that there's this general hopelessness. People just kind of living, dragging their way through life day to day. This is not a particularly happy place to be in time, right? Gosh, I'm having so much trouble finding the exact landlords are not ashamed to let dwellings like the 6 or 7 cellars on the quay directly below Scotland Bridge, utterly uninhabitable places, stands deprived of all fittings for doors and windows. This is the first paragraph on page 706. So, yeah, there's just, we get the sense of like overcrowdedness and kind of general, like there's no windows or doors in some of these like kind of ramshackle houses. All right, so we get the point, right? This is one of many different, and if you wanted to, you could read forward into this book and just find other examples that I haven't assigned of documents written like firsthand accounts during the Industrial Revolution of just sort of like the plight of the working class. So Engels is not just making this stuff up, right? As much as we might want to blame a dirty commie for lying to us about how terrible capitalism actually is, he's actually onto something here. He's writing this book, Condition of the Working Class in England, for a German audience. Like he's not writing to the people of England. He's writing this book for people back home in Germany, where he's from. Why do you think he would be going to England and writing about the hopelessness, the filth of Manchester, England, for a German audience? What's the point of doing that, do you think?
Bring back what capitalism's like. Like, see, this is what it'll be like if we come here, and you'll be just as miserable.
Yeah. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. This is a warning to the people of continental Europe, of Germany. Like, look, England kicked off the Industrial Revolution. They were miles ahead. Everyone is trying to catch up with England in their industrialism, but because England leads the way, they're the ones that kind of paved the trail for the Industrial Revolution. We talked about this. So Engels is giving a dire warning to people in Germany, saying, do we really want to be like England? Do we want to live alongside the dirty, filth, trash-infested rivers like the Irk? Like, do we want to transform our beautiful cities into cesspools, as you put it? He's saying, no, of course not. Like, this is a step backward for humankind. Last question. Do you guys think this is true? Like, is the Industrial Revolution a step backward for humanity? After reading about the filth and the hopelessness and the overcrowding and all this stuff, was the Industrial Revolution actually a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not trying to lead the question here. I'm honestly asking.
There's definitely good and bad things that came from it.
Yeah. What are some of the good things that come from this?
Just like, well, I mean, all the industrialization, like having production of goods, people can have stuff more. There's a lot more of everything. And I guess obviously a workforce, people have those hours and stuff, but obviously the bad things would be like the working conditions and long work days. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this? Do you guys agree with this? Or on the balance, is this a step backward for Western civilization? Or is this a step forward? There's no wrong answer. Would life have been better? J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, he wrote that the internal combustion engine was like the worst invention ever made by humanity. Right? Cars and the steam engine and certain things like that have radically transformed human life. We would have been so much better if we lived closer to the state of nature that humankind has lived through for tens of thousands of years before this. We'd be better off. Do you think that that's accurate? Right? Is life actually worse than having cars and planes and CO2 emissions?
I personally agree with him on, but I think it's like the world's going to evolve no matter what. We're going to advance in technology no matter what.
Oh, that's good. Okay. I like that a lot. So things are going to change no matter what. We just have to adapt and go along with it. Right. Keep that thought in mind over the next few weeks of this class, that things are going to evolve and change no matter what. We just have to roll with the punches. That's a really important point that you brought up, Jack. This is where we're going to read about the evolution of certain ideas, like socialism comes out of this period, communism, anarchism, modern day conservatism, all these kind of isms, all these ideas of like how to structure the world in the best possible way. Those are all ideas that come from the Industrial Revolution. And the idea is, look, the world is changing. How do we cope with that change? How do we rearrange things in society that can take advantage of industrialism and benefit people? That's the whole idea behind socialism, is like, look, we have factories now, we have the workplace, we're stuck with it. We're never going to go back to the Stone Age, unless we blow ourselves up, to oblivion. But we're never going to go back. So we might as well harness the power of the Industrial Revolution to serve the working class rather than exploit the working class. Like, that's the whole idea behind socialism, for instance. So we're going to be talking about these kinds of ideologies after the first exam, getting into kind of the 19th century, the beginnings of communism and socialism as ideas to try and cope with this new modern life. Anarchism, even ideas like feminism start to come out of this period. And it's all just embracing change, right? Or trying to make the best of change. So that's a really good point. All right. Well, I hope this helps. I hope these two documents, if you're still working on the essay that's due by the end of today, these two documents will serve you really well. The Engels document is a lot more pessimistic. You could definitely use that in answering the second question and saying, the disadvantages of the Industrial Revolution come from any number of things. You know, the hopelessness, the overcrowding, the filth, the destruction of the natural environment. You know, those are all things you could easily find in the Engels document. Any questions at all about the second analysis paper while we're here? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Cool, guys. Thanks a lot. Just turn that in to me by the end of today. Next week, all you got to do is the exam. It's going to be an easy week next week. We're not going to meet. Just do the exam, get it done, and then you basically have like the rest of the week free. So enjoy that. If you have any last minute questions, you think of something, just let me know by email, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. All right. Well, have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, we're not gonna be Zooming next Friday.
Not going to be Zooming next Friday. Correct.
All right. All right.